Welcome to The Power and the Pain, where your past isn't your prison.
It's the fuel for your purpose.
I'm Greg Pease, combat veteran, NLP trainer, and your guide to turn trauma into triumph.
And I'm Catherine, truth teller, mirror holder, and voice for the breakthrough hiding in your breakdown.
This is The Power and the Pain. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Power and the Pain. This week, we're going to be talking about symbolic healing. And I got a feeling that a lot of people may not have even heard the term before. It's fairly new for me, and I know, Catherine, you were, when we left off on the last episode, we had some conversation in between where you had even mentioned, you were like, what is symbolic healing? And I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's something I heard within the last couple of years of my life. And so let's talk about what is symbolic healing first. And I really appreciate it. One time when I was training Dr. Adriana James, she had shared something with me that I can remember when she said it, I was like, oh. She said, in order to figure out what something is, we have to figure out what it isn't first. Mm-hmm. And not always, but sometimes when she said that, it was like, oh, all right, let's use that today. So if we're going to figure out what symbolic healing is, let's first maybe take a look at what it's not. And what symbolic healing is not, the biggest, when we look at things like talk therapy, and there's all different modalities in the world. And I always say they're all right. And the one that you should pick is the one that works for you.
I love that.
You got to just go, you go taste this and you're like, oh, I can't believe they said that. It's not yours, right? Because there's another group of people in that room. They're like, oh my God, I'm so glad he said that. Okay. So talk therapy may be for you. Symbolic healing may be for you. Allow yourself to explore and find what the thing is. What I discovered in talk therapy, and I'm probably going to upset some therapists. Love you guys. What I discovered, this is what I have to share. Therapists, and this is a broad stroke when I say it, they are taught, and I think as a society, I think we're doing really good with creating mental health awareness, and I think in the future we'll see changes in even talk therapy. We're doing the best we could with what we knew when we started. When people become a therapist, they are taught the psychology of how the trauma is created. That's probably a good thing to know. But the dilemma with talk therapy, this is Greg's opinion, and through my experiences, reject this if talk therapy is for you, because that's the one for you. You go in, you have to talk about this intimate, dark time, which is not the funnest thing, but so what? We're healing. You share this, you put it on the table. And then the therapist used some really fancy words to tell you why you have trauma. What? I knew I had it before I came. That's what I paid for. You see, the dilemma is I'm going to suggest that in talk therapy, the show just goes on and on and on and on and on. I suggest that there's the deep healing there might be a lack in the deep healing. In talk therapy, we validate hey, you get mad because this happened when you were a kid, and so that's what it means in your nervous system and such. So we have to identify what your trigger is, and then we have to give you a tool so that when you have your trigger, okay, listen, it's kind of it's almost like in talk therapy, we're addressing the symptom and not the problem. So imagine talk therapy was a mechanic and your starter went bad in your car. And you took your car to the mechanic and they diagnose your car. You know nothing about mechanics or starters. They diagnose your car, and when they get done, they explain to you that your starter has went bad, and they explain why your starter has went bad in very detail. And then they tell you that now you won't be able to start your car with your key because you have a bad starter. I don't believe that, but let's just walk with this. You can't start your car with your key because you have a bad starter. We anchor the problem. And then solution, right? So this is where all the therapists get mad at me no, we help. And then we give a solution for the symptom. So it looks like this, the mechanic The mechanic says, if you get out and take a monkey wrench and tap on your starter, this thing right here, don't worry about what it's called, but right here, if you tap on that every time and a second person starts the car, then your car will start. And if you do that, your car will start, but you're not going to be able to start it on your own. Well, then that person leaves and it does the trick. And as long as they continue to do the trick, they can continue to start the car. And they're very aware that I can't start my own car. Okay, let's talk about, so now that we covered like what is symbolic healing, what is it not, let's kind of dive into what is it. Symbolic healing, there is, I don't know, like my mind wanted to say thousands and I was like, there could be more, I don't know, in the whole world, but modalities for symbolic healing. So symbolic healing is not like this thing like, oh, we just, if you're just hearing it today, it's not a modality that like a secret modality you missed out on. It's like a qualification of modalities. So there's a ton of modalities that we can do in symbolic healing. And if we keep going with the mechanic metaphor, if we did symbolic healing, so you go to your therapist first, your mechanic, and they tell you can't start your car and you have to tap it here. And you've been tapping the car there and the car's been starting. So as far as you're concerned, the therapist helped you solve the problem. I think the therapist only helped you deal with the symptom. We didn't solve the problem, we just dealt with the symptom. So if I were to tell you after that experience with your car, if I were to tell you, hey, you just need a new starter. If you replace your starter, you'll be able to start the car on your own. You won't have to tap it no more. Now, if you're my best friend and you knew I was a mechanic, you might believe me. But if you knew nothing about cars and I was like an associate and I told you this, I want you to understand the fear that you would have. It sounds like logic because we understand cars, so we're like, oh, of course I'll just replace my starter. But if you didn't understand cars, here's the fear you have. Right now, I can't start my car, but I know how to make my car start. If I do what you're trying to tell me to do, Greg, I don't know if my car's going to start afterwards, and then I don't have my trick to make my car start. So if I tell you that you need a new starter, there's a really good chance that you're going to be like, ugh, getting that freeze, flight, fight, and freeze mode. There's a good chance. And metaphorically speaking, I'm going to suggest that I cannot tell you your solution. No one can tell me my solution. I don't know, like maybe it's possible to work, but the odds are just not favorable. If you want to help someone change and you see clear as day what it is and you try to tell them, it's their blind spot. It's weird, but it's like you got to imagine wherever you're sitting right now, if you look around and see everything you see and imagine someone telling you that there's another thing in the room, you'd have to be like, no. So symbolic healing, the opposite of symbolic healing is like, let's directly talk about it. We're not symbolic, we're literal. Symbolic healing, I might say to you, hey, Catherine, do you get your oil changed in your car? And you might say, yeah. Even though you don't know about cars, you know you get your oil changed. You don't know how to do it, but you go to a place and they change it. And I say, oh, okay. Do you go to the same place usually? And you might say, oh, I go around different places or say. And have you ever seen places that offer like additional services where they do oil changes? And you might say, yeah, I've seen them before. And then I might say to you, well, I have this oil shop that I go to and they do some additional services. Their additional services would cost you X, let's say $250, $5, I don't know, whatever, pick a number. And then I say to you, I don't tell you about your starter. We're not going to talk about your starter. I say to you, if you were to take your car here for your next oil change and allow them to do the additional service, it's going to cost this much money. Would you be willing to just try it out? I'm not promising it'll work. Would you be willing to just try it out if you had a money back guarantee that when they got done, you could just start your car inside? Well, that's a no-brainer. The answer is yes by all of us. Like, I'm getting my money back if it doesn't work? Now, metaphorically speaking, keep in mind, what does this have to do with symbolic healing? I offer a money-back guarantee on my symbolic healing of firewalking. Okay, every modality, every company out there, that's on them, how they operate business. But I offer a money-back guarantee for people that want to experience, like, what is firewalking? And then, like, if I told you it was going to help you get rid of fear, It would be the equivalency of me telling you, you're just going to be able to start your car after he does a thing. You're like, what? Hey, listen, if you want to try it out for $99, I'll give your money back if the car doesn't start afterwards. So you go to the mechanic. Of course, you're like, I'll get my money back. You go to the mechanic, you pay the tab, you come back 4 hours later, you sit down in your car, and you go, vroom. You have no clue what happened. You no longer deal with the symptom of tapping on the starter. You no longer are aware of the problem you used to have. But you're not sure of how it left. This is kind of how symbolic healing works. Let me pass it off to you, Catherine. What are your thoughts so far?
Okay, so tell me then, what does it mean to walk through fear symbolically?
Let's go. You weren't the only one thinking that. Let's go. All right. So firewalking, how are we creating a symbolic shift? So now, by the way, when I speak on firewalking, I'm speaking specifically to my Step Into Your Power events. So I can't speak for any firewalking event. You know, you may have been to a firewalking event in the past or one in the future, different from mine, and have a different experience. But people that attend my firewalking event, and Catherine, you have as well, somewhere along the way, no one ever taught me this. Like, the truth is, every event that I've ever been to is like, the energy is felt like you have to do everything. Like, that's kind of what it's like, there's no idea that someone's not going to do it. So no one's ever taught me this, but at my events, I make it very absurdly clear, you don't have to do anything. At this event, any element, you can just sit out and you don't have to give any reason whatsoever. You can just sit it out. And not only are you allowed to sit it out, but I tell everyone else at the event, you're not allowed to go tell them, oh, come on, you can do it. You have a free pass to sit it out, and we're going to celebrate you for standing in your power and deciding not to do it. So in this event, like, this is part of the symbolic what's happening. Because when we'll talk about the neurology shift, but the next day when you wake up, if I was to get you really pumped up and excited and motivated, you would have so much adrenaline, you would literally be the equivalency of high compared to your normal self. What do you mean when you say high, Greg? An altered state of mind. So much of an altered state of mind, you will make decisions that you will not normally make. Kind of like being drunk or high or whatever the next thing is. So if I were to get you drunk on adrenaline, you would make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. You wouldn't realize it. It would just take place. And the next morning, you'd say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. That's wild. But you would still believe, because you made a decision that you wouldn't normally make. When you're sober again, you're aware that you wouldn't normally make that decision. So you would then unconsciously attach your power to me. Greg got me to do that. Now, this is a thing, but if we go to other people's events, well, and they're not consciously trying to get you to attach their power to them, they're just trying to make sure you get across the finish line.
Yeah.
But if you consciously, so take the firewalk, right? I teach before we walk up to the coals, we're teaching what do we do with our mind. Okay, because there is like, our mind has to go to a place. When you walk up to these coals, even before we get to the coals, like, we have quiet meditative time. You are completely and totally grounded, completely conscious, aware of what you're doing, in clear mind, and you don't have to walk. You can walk all the way up to the edge, stare at the coals, and then say, I'm all done. I got everything I needed. If you choose to walk past those coals, the next day when you wake up, you can't attach that to anything but you. In a calm, clear state of mind, you faced an extreme fear. Now, most of us say, like, oh, okay, fear, like, I face my fears and stuff like that. But listen, only ever firewalk if you're called to it. But for just a second, everyone that's listening, if you can, close your eyes. If you're driving, keep them open. Okay. If you can, like, please, take a second and just imagine these coals are 1,200 degrees. And let me paint a picture for you. Aluminum melts at 1,100. The coals are 1,200 degrees. And you're going to take your bare feet. So, like, I understand. Got a little excited there. You're like, I understand that other people have done this, so I know that it can be done, right? But now imagine that you're barefoot, inches in front of the coals, and 1,200 degrees, like it's hot enough that like feet away from it, there is a heat coming off of it. And in that moment, you have everything inside of your neurology, because you're not drunk on adrenaline. Everything inside of your neurology says, we can't do this. It's not safe. Like it doesn't, I understand he says, I understand he just walked. I don't quite get what's going on, but like I can't touch 1,200 degrees and then touch it again and then touch it again. I can't do that. Our neurology inside, you're being offered a position where you're having a physiological response, a neurological response. Your body is like freezing. It's like, I was excited about this at lunch, but I didn't realize we were like really doing this, right? So you have this opportunity in which you can then say, okay, earlier I learned some things about my mind and how it plays tricks and how the story I tell myself matters. Let me try to tell myself a different story in this moment. And you'll go where you go in your head. Like right now, I'm sure Catherine is recalling, like, I remember in that moment, here's where I went in my head. Wherever you went in your head, it wasn't thinking about how hot the fire was it? Or how bad this was going to be, was it? What would you say anything that you recall that you were lining up for your fire walk?
Well, the experience of being at we had the 2 separate fires. And so the lead up to it was, I had my back to what was happening. And so, I didn't see other people going through it first. And, even hearing all of the kind of description about what it is, I still kind of had in my head, like, is it really going to be that hot? Honestly, that was my thought but I also have people who I knew had done it before. And even though I hadn't talked to them directly about their experience, I was like, well, I know that it's possible because they've done it.
Right. Right. So take us a little bit. And that's what I think a lot of people have a similar experience to you.
Yeah.
I definitely had a similar experience.
Yeah.
Like when I heard about firewalking, like, and I always tell people, like, you're called to it or you're not.
Yeah.
I was
100%.
definitely called. When I heard about it, I was like, yes, what is that? And I remember thinking like a week, 2 weeks out, like I was telling my wife, like, I'm so excited that I was excited.
Yeah.
I remember flying out and like the day before it started to set in, like, whoa, you're going to have to really put your, like, thinking, I started thinking about a day before, but I remember thinking to myself, like, whatever it is, other people have done it.
Yeah.
And then I also remember when I stepped up to the edge of the coals the first time.
Yeah.
Good.
And that was actually, so I used that line from The Matrix, like the Oracle tells you what you needed to hear. And so I feel like I needed to have that thought that says, well, I honestly thought maybe it was a gimmick. Like I thought, well, maybe it's not actually going to be hot. Spoiler alert, it actually is hot. And I found that by my feet where I was up against the edge and there was like a little coal and it caught up underneath my toe and I was like, oh, it's actually hot. Let's go. And so that was doing it. But, it is, I fully believe that it really is something that people are called to. And is an invitation from the fire to come into it. And that is, the mindset work that we did the entire day leading up to it was so impactful in making that experience what it was. And your reverence for the fire and even just the conversation that happened before we went into it felt sacred, almost like a ceremonial ritual that we were walking into. Yeah,
that's beautiful, by the way. Thank you for sharing.
It was
I love
a beautiful
it.
experience. Thank you for the experience.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, this is awesome. It feels so good. I mean, this is the goal. This is the goal in creating. I appreciate hearing that feedback. And this is a projection, right? And then tell us your feedback on this. But when we look at what is symbolic healing, and this is Greg's projection, and I literally have to be off by a little bit, so then we'll gather from you. So Catherine goes into this at some point and is like, okay, it's like, sure, it's firewalking, but like we're going to do it. Like there's even like to the point of like, it's probably like there's some type of gimmick. Like I get that there's something here, but it's not like, okay. And then she has this experience last second, like, oh my gosh, like I'm really going to feel heat. which allowed, I'm going to suggest probably allowed you to have a little bit of fear inside of like, oh, wow, and then you shared with me, and you even said a little bit there, like afterwards you had this like, I'll use the word revelation of like, or this download of like, oh, let me, like the symbolic piece is, I couldn't have told her, but she can't, something in there for you in that, like, I had this idea, like if other people, like if someone else did this thing, someone else did that. Okay. Yeah. I'll just be, I'll just go and do it. And then the realization, like, these are my projections, right? And then the realization of like, oh shit, the coals are actually hot, metaphorically hopping across. Oh shit, that's actually going to take some work. Hold on one level deeper. And if I ground myself and just taking the next step, it's irrelevant because I'll get on the other side and be so excited. And then like in that moment, like God, the universe, the fire was giving you that message. You can't unhear it.
Yeah.
But if you'd have met me for a one-on-one session and I'd have told you those words, you said, yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not saying you would have said, I know, but your neurology would have been like, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you have an experience, whatever the experience is, that's the thing in symbolic healing. When you have an experience and you have your own download, your neurology is not fine. Your neurology believes you. It doesn't totally believe me. It's like, maybe, you got a little guard up. You should. But your neurology believes you when you have the download.
Yeah.
Speaking on different, I talked about the experience. I'll talk about, so in Nashville, there's a veteran nonprofit called Creative Vets, like the word creative, but in one word, Creative Vets. The veterans listen to this, you can go check them out, creativevets.org, incredible organization. I had the honor of serving in Iraq with the founder, and when we got back, he launched this organization to help veterans dealing with the unseen wounds of war. In this program, they fly these veterans out to Nashville. They meet with a battle buddy. So I've been through the program myself, writing a song, and then now I am honored to share as much as I can to be a mentor for others. So these veterans all come from like wherever, and they're struggling with like, I mean, to say the most insane stories, like every time I get to write another song with another veteran, it's like, how does this hit in the heart again? Like, I thought I heard all the stories. And so they'll come in, they'll get a battle buddy, and they'll tell their story. And the battle buddy, it's easy to talk about the story. Their battle buddy is someone that's been through similar combat experiences. So like, when we were on this out and I had to do this, and it's easy to talk to your battle buddy because there's an understood ground.
Yeah.
So the story they get to be heard, and then they'll go in, literally they go to the Grand Ole Opry, and they'll sit down in a writing room with a #1 hit song writer. They'll share their story with their battle buddy. There's just like this level of comfort, like, hey, it's 2-on-1, so no. They'll share their story in whatever way they'll share it, and then this will get written into a song. Well, afterwards, the song gets totally produced, and they'll take this song home, and they'll feel excited to share their song. And then people will listen to their song, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I mean, it hits people right in the feels. And the song is, generally speaking, a little bit ambiguous. It doesn't say, while I was doing a raid, XYZ happened.
Yeah. It
just tells a story, and you get that something took place in the background. You got the general idea. And so people can, on the other side, can get a feel for what happened. The person sharing the song gets to see this emotion. And yes, that person would have emotion if they shared their story raw. But if I shared my story raw and the other person had emotion, I might feel bad for causing that emotion because the story's so dark. Like, I know humans aren't supposed to experience these things, and I'm responsible for making you experience it now. So it doesn't feel good if I tell you the raw story and I see your emotion. But if I can share my song and I see your emotion, I'm like, they get it. Now my song, by the way, story, has meaning, purpose. Viktor Frankl said, suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. When our story has a purpose or meaning, it no longer is suffering to us. But the experience is them writing the song. Symbolically, they are now sharing their story. And people are excited to hear their story. The truth is, people are not excited to hear the raw story. It hurts to hear the raw story. And then it sucks because I know I'm responsible for sharing it with you. And I know I don't want to do that to people. So I'll stop sharing my story. But if I can share my song and you're like, have all the feels and you're like honored to have heard my song, I can now feel good. So
I think that's beautiful, because also like the healing power of music and just being in that, and also not silencing yourself, not silencing your story, and being able to, you know, to share that, because somebody else may resonate with something that they hear, and that may, you know, then let that full effect.
Every time. Okay, everyone, we got a general idea. We're going to go a little bit deeper. In the next episode, we're going to talk about, we may share a little more on fire, and we're going to talk about breathwork and how that is symbolic healing, because Catherine is a certified breathwork and trauma-informed coach.
Yeah, trauma-informed breathwork facilitator and also certified coach. Yeah.
Yes. So Catherine works in the modality, or shares. Works in is a fair description too. Shares the modality of breathwork. Well, guess what? You've all been breathing your whole life. Okay, but she creates an experience. I'll see you guys next week, and we're going to talk about that experience. Make sure you keep following along so you can stay up to date with all the good tips and tricks. And I spoke too long, so cut this part out, Trent.
How long was that? That felt short. If this hit you deep, trust that.
Your pain has power, and your story isn't over.
Follow, share, and send this to someone who you think might benefit.
I'm Greg.
And I'm Catherine.
And this was The Power in the Pain. Keep stepping into your power.